Hi, everyone. This is Ray of the Fashion Pulpit, and welcome to another episode of The Power of Swapping, where we explore swap stories with different people. And for this series, we are actually going out Singapore. The past two series, we went to the USA, Canada, and for this specific episode, we are taking you to Bangkok, Thailand. We will be talking to Jessica Teal, who is the founder of Swap Till You Drop Bangkok. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Ray.
Thank you so much for taking the time in being a guest of this podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be sharing all about Swap in Bangkok.
Yes, we are excited to hear your stories and how you started the movement in Bangkok. And you, to start, let us know how you end up in Bangkok at the same time. How did you start Swap Till You Drop there?
Okay, I'll start with how I ended up here, which will lead me to the swap. At the time, I think I visited Thailand about 10 years ago, and I just, absolutely loved it. I fell in love with the vibe here, and I only visited for 10 days, and you will hear many other expats say something similar where they came, they didn't want to leave, or they never left. I unfortunately had to leave, but I did come back a year later. I went back to New York, and I was living in New York at the time, and it was just too cold for me. So I went back to my hometown, Los Angeles. And after experiencing time away in Thailand, and before that, I went to South Korea for the first time that I left the US on a very long airplane ride. I just had this like travel bug in me and this passion to want to see more of the world. So I went to this crazy concert called Coachella, and I had an amazing time. It was sort of like a big bang goodbye with my friends. And I sold a bunch of my stuff. I bought a ticket and I came back to Thailand. And ever since then, I didn't look back. And I've been here for 8 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And, I've pretty much had the same conversation in a taxi over and over with the taxi driver. How long have you been here? What are you doing? So I'm a
You're
professional.
basically a Thai now.
Yeah, I'm basically Thai now. But yeah, so I was here for about a year, and then I realized that I wasn't able to have any secondhand shopping experience, accessible secondhand shopping experience. And luckily, I met a few girls here, and they said, "Oh, there's a swap event happening. Would you like to join me?" So I went, and it was a swap. It was a very small swap, very, very informal, in an art studio. And basically everything for swapping was in the middle of the room. And I'll never forget all these girls on their hands and knees crawling around trying to find things in the pile of clothes. And I did find some treasures, and that was I felt very grateful. But I left that thinking, oh, this is such a great idea. Let's figure out a way to keep going. And so so we I talked with a few of my friends, and we thought, this is a really good opportunity, because there are two things that happen in Thailand as an expat, especially a woman. It's quite difficult to find clothes that are accurate in your form, body size. And a small here is extra small, and a medium is a small, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that it's very easy to shop, actually. In every train station that you go to, in every little market area, there's clothes and shoes and accessories, and it's so cheap as in affordable,
Right.
like very affordable, and cheap as in it's not going to last you that long. So I was addicted to shopping for a long time. And this goes back into like sort of my past with living with my grandmother, and we were mall rats 100%. We were 5 hours, 6 hours walking around the mall, and it wasn't until my dad started bringing secondhand stuff home, and he just kept doing this all the time. He would find all these treasures and these amazing things and clothes and jewelry. And one day he said, you know, Jess, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And ever since then, I was like, oh, that's so true. So when I was living in Los Angeles, my whole life was like secondhand life, you know, my furniture, my clothes, everything. And yeah, so coming to Thailand, the appeal of cheap clothes, that's where the addiction started, right? I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about secondhand life because everything is so affordable. Right. And yeah, then I eventually realized like this stuff doesn't last that long. You know, shoes were breaking all the time, dresses were tearing. So why even bother paying money into these things if it's gonna, you know, if it's just gonna, you know, not be good quality, if it's not gonna last you. And so after that swap experience that I went to, I think within 6 months, I hosted my very first swap at my house.
Wow.
Yeah, I had about, I would say 15 girls. I made food, I had wine, it was just all like a social activity. And yeah, and then it started to, you know, kind of build up. So I would say for the first year, I did it in my house. And then after that, I moved to a new apartment, a bigger apartment. And a very good friend of mine who's actually living in Singapore now, yeah, she said, she came over to me at the side of the swap and she was like, Jess, I can't find anything. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, nothing's organized. Everything's just all over the place, right? So, you know, I realized, okay, this is getting to a point where there's 30 girls in my house and nobody can find anything. So what's the obvious next step is to let's get organized, right? So since then I started to, you know, organize, make signs and, you know, just be a little bit more efficient. And yeah, after that, so there's many layers to how this happened.
Right.
After that, a couple more times of having 30 women in my house, I realized that this was just getting, like, it was a monster that was growing and I could no longer host 30 women in my house once a month at that capacity. So I had to find another space. So I collaborated with a fellow creative mind who was running a community art space here. And that space became the headquarters of the swap for several years. And we were able to host even more people and it became an official event. Okay. Right. So meaning that there was an entrance fee, there were drinks, there was networking, there was cleaning and pre-production, post-production. Yeah. So yeah, it built like, it started like a little baby and then it became a giant toddler and all that. So, and now we're at a point where we run multiple swaps in different areas of Bangkok with all kinds of, all kinds of scenarios, from outdoor markets to restaurants to community spaces to schools. And yeah, those are the sort of typical types of spaces for us. So yeah, so that's where we're at right now with Swap. That's the build up.
Wow, that's amazing progress of how you've started and up to what you're doing now. I would say, because you've started like 8 years ago, you're probably one of the OGs of swap movement in Asia, because I've never known anyone. I think that the most that I know is Jupia, which is a swap community also in Hong Kong, but I think they've started like 6-7 years, but if
actually, I would love to be known as the OG of swapping, but it didn't happen until like a year after. So let's say it's been about 7 years now.
Okay,
yeah.
Still one of the longest, because we've started swapping in Singapore like 2015. So it's just like 5 years not from now. So having that kind of experience, so you were saying that it was 15 ladies and become 30. Was this among your friends, or you were accepting anyone who were like, willing to be part of that event?
Well, it started with friends, and those first 15 were, I would say, 90% friends, and then the rest
Mhm,
of the people were invited by a couple of the girls who were attending. Uh,
mhm.
so yeah, so it started off as friends, and then the word just started to spread more and more. So it's absolutely insane. I have people who have been swapping from the very beginning, still swapping to this day.
Oh, that's so
And I'm
good.
and I'm so grateful. One of them is Thai, and she's like, the swap is the number one, way for her to get her clothes, and I'm so grateful that she's been around for that long. But still to this day, we're still seeing new faces every time we swap. So we went from 15 girls, or 15, let's say, participants, because sometimes there are men included in the swap as
Right.
well.
Mhm.
We started with 15 participants to now we see about 70, sometimes 80 people every swap. So
That's
it's
amazing.
yeah, it's definitely built up, which is why now we have even more of a demand to do multiple swaps throughout the month in different
Mhm.
locations around Bangkok. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I will talk about why. I would like to talk about also why we do the style of swapping that we do in this,
Mhm.
concrete jungle city.
Yes. Before you jumped into that, I just have a few more questions of like how you started, because it's so fascinating how hearing your story of how you started and promotes swapping culture in Bangkok, and knowing that it's an Asian countries, there's a lot of negative mindset or standard of what secondhand is. So with that, you starting with the 15 participants, how did you see it evolve in terms of them being open to doing swap? Because at the end of the day, swap, it's still secondhand. How did you, were you encountering such challenges, and how did you overcome it? And if it's still like is a challenge, how are you addressing it?
Okay. Yes, I will tell you right now that the first swap and the first many first swaps, the first few swaps, were mainly expats, and the reason being is because secondhand culture is a lot more accepted in other outside of Asia. I'm sure you've come to understand this too. Secondhand in some parts of Asia is actually not acceptable.
Right.
It's the question of why would you want to wear somebody else's giveaways, leftovers, donations? Donations are for the poor or something like
Mhm.
that. So that was definitely something that we encountered a lot. And now that concept has not been so much of an issue anymore. The way that we were able to overcome it was by encouraging our swappers to always bring clean and still wearable clothing. Because obviously the image that you get in your mind is people show up with a bunch of bags and you don't know what you're going to get, right? It's like, oh,
Mhm.
surprise. Unfortunately, we've had to, remind people of this, because sometimes, some items that are not wearable still get lost in their bags and their donations. And, we understand, but we want people to be aware of what they're doing and how they're treating their clothing and all that. The whole idea of swapping is to allow somebody else to love and wear the things that you no longer want to love and wear in your life, right?
Mhm.
So therefore, they should still be in good condition. So we had to promote that idea a lot in order for the acceptance to come with that. And in these last 6 years, 7 years, we've been seeing the increase of the Asian community attending the swap. So
That's
much so to the point that there are other communities organizing swaps. One of them is a fashion revolution. So the
mhm.
Thailand ambassadors, they've also been running swaps, and I would probably say it's much more Thai than swap till you drop swaps, which
Right.
is great because even though we've been promoting the idea that secondhand is acceptable, there's always still going to be that little bit of hesitation, all right, from the
Mhm.
Asian community. But as an expat, I understand that I'm here in in Thailand. This is not my country, so I'm very
Mhm.
glad that there are communities, Thai communities, that are organizing swaps, because they have the reach to their own people to help them understand this concept. Because at the end of the day, what we are doing as swappers and swap facilitators is for the whole world. It's not just city by city and house by house. It's really for the whole world.
Right.
We should be doing this more because of the
Yeah.
environmental situation. So
Yeah. I'm glad that you've mentioned about the environmental situation, because hearing your story, um, your main motivation to start it was to get clothes. But obviously, it also is directed to the environment. Has it always been that angle of more fashion angle of why you're doing the swap instead of like the environmental? Because like, speaking for myself, like the main reason why we're doing what we're doing now, it was the main catalyst was really to provide a solution to what's happening in the world now.
mhm.
But is it the same thing with you, or is it gonna be always like Thai people would be more attracted if you position this in a way that is in fashion of like how you can be fashionable and like change every now and then without really thinking of the cost?
I mean, okay, so if people are thinking in a fashion mindset and not having to worry so much about the cost, no matter if they're not conscious of it or not, just making those decisions does make an impact, right?
Right.
But talking about angles, um, on a personal note, when I started doing swap, it was because I was not happy with the quality of the clothing I was getting, and I felt like I was struggling to keep my wardrobe the way that I liked it. So yes, it was coming from a fashion sense, but as a avid secondhand shopper throughout most of my life, I was aware that secondhand, breathing new life into already pre-loved items, not only clothing, but anything like appliances, furniture, etc.
Mhm.
I knew that by doing that, I was not contributing to a bigger issue. Was it always the main focus at the beginning? Not so much, but
Mhm.
because of the community that we're involved in here, because of the types of people that come, a lot more eyes have been opened, and we've learned a lot along the way too. I mean, if you wanna ask me what is the biggest issue with
Mhm.
swap overall,
Yes,
is the
go for it.
leftovers, the donations, the amount of things over time of seeing how much was left over. I started to learn, oh my goodness, like people are shopping way more than they need to be. We own
Mhm.
so much clothes, it's totally unnecessary. So the journey kind of shifted, where it was like, yes, we were conscious of it, but it wasn't really something that we were promoting. It was more of like, optimize your wardrobe. And then I would say within a couple of years of doing it that way, we were like, oh, okay, for sure, there is a whole other aspect to this that we need to cover.
Mhm.
Now, when I got here 8 years ago, I feel that the sustainability movement was not very strong. I
Right.
mean, it's just been in the last couple of years that there are no plastic bags in 7-Eleven, and people are making better choices. So as Thailand shifted into a more sustainability friendly, eco-friendly mindset, so did we. We adjusted with the flow of Thailand. So
Amazing.
now, there are refill shops, there are secondhand shops, there are eco shops, there's eco businesses. I mean, everything is all about being eco-friendly. And yeah, so we are in that bubble here for sure.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Swap Till You Drop is now all about accessible, but we focus on an accessibility to sustainable lifestyle choices. So yeah, it's still fashion, and it's still
Mhm.
networking, and it's still social, but by attending Swap, it gives you an opportunity to practice sustainability in a way that doesn't feel inaccessible, because the same way that we look at vegetarians and healthy food, right? Vegetarianism and healthy food, we've been made to believe that that stuff is expensive. Therefore, it's difficult to have in our lives. And it's actually not. And it's the same thing with being sustainable. You don't realize that actually it can be way more affordable to make sustainable choices. Even if that bottle that you're getting is cheap, somewhere down the line, it costs more than to just, carry your own cup with you. You know what I mean? Like we need to really focus on like educating people about this issue, and swap is just one way that we do that here, for sure.
Right. Cool. And do you find that everyone, like on the get-go, understand the economics of swapping? Because like you pay an entrance fee in your case, and for our case, they pay subscription, and then they bring in their clothes. And what you've mentioned a while ago, like, I mean, a lot of Singaporeans as well, or people who are living in Singapore, back then, post-pandemic, they go there to shop because, again, it's very affordable. And having that kind of accessibility and convenience to clothes, how are you actually dealing with this kind of, affordability versus you telling them like, hey, you need to pay an entrance fee for you to be able to get these clothes, and you need to give us your clothes? How is it? How do you reconcile that idea?
Okay, so I've had many thoughts and many conversations about this, and I don't know if you, maybe you don't know yet. I'm about to tell you. I'm going to tell you that our entrance fee is so affordable, and it also includes the drink or the snack. Our entrance fee is 400 baht, which is approximately about $13.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and the way that we swap, so I think this will give a full understanding. The way that we swap is no limit swapping. I have tried the other styles of swapping, the points and the exchanges, like you bring 10, take 10, etc. In this society that we live in here, everybody is either like hustling, they're working a lot, they're freelancing, they're super busy. So having to think too much about this choice just doesn't work. It just doesn't really work here. So what we are able to do for people is to give them facilitate a night once a month where they come and they bring anything that they want and they take anything that they want. And the leftovers are managed accordingly. So we donate them to organizations that we know personally. It's very acceptable. So the way that I reconcile it is, and I say to people, how much it does a shirt or a dress cost at H&M? It's about the same, if not more. So for the same price of one item of clothing, you can come, you can bring anything that you don't want as long as it's in good condition, and you can take anything that you want. And with the number of people that come, I'll tell you right now, there's always plenty to go around. And the point that is proven by doing it this way is that we have too much stuff. That is the bottom line. And my team and I, we talk about this all the time. And, how we're still, after 7 years, still shocked at how much stuff is always left over afterwards. Doesn't matter if it's 15 people or 70 people, there's always too much left over. So we talk about that, we share that in social media. We say, hey, after this swap, there were 140 kgs of clothing left over, so let's try and do better next time. So I'm a firm believer in, leaving something better than you found it. So that goes for the swap too. Let's try to lessen each time how much is left over afterwards. So my reconciliation is that it's affordable and it's accessible. And yes, we have to charge because, we work very hard to make this come to life. And there are other things involved, that go with it. in order to make the impact, we have to have social media. And in order to have
Yeah.
social media, we need somebody to manage that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there
for
are
sure.
costs.
For sure, that everyone needs to understand that there are costs. Aside us being passionate of doing that, we also need more hands to navigate all this organizing and really pushing this movement forward. And you mentioning accessibility. So a while ago, you mentioned that you organize a couple of swaps in different cities. So with you, the question of accessibility, how do you make it more accessible, even if you are an
Even if I'm an event, what? Sorry?
event based, like do you have like a permanent shop now, or like
Oh, no,
it's
no, no.
more?
Yeah, everything we do is all event based.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we go around to different parts of of Bangkok and different kinds of venues and all that. I mean, sometimes we do swaps in places that last for a long time, and then we move on to somewhere else and all that. So, um, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, so I think that's one way for you to make swapping accessible in
Hmm.
Bangkok, by organizing different locations. Like in a month, how many times do you organize swaps? And
Okay.
is it simultaneously, or is it one after another?
Okay. So at the moment we have been doing one swap a month. This year, obviously through pandemic challenges, I call I keep going back to like this, beautiful document that I made for 2020 swap 2020 plans, right? It was like, that song by Sierra, Level Up, Level Up,
Level up,
Level
yeah.
Up. Like every time I see that plan, that's what I kept thinking of. And that was the plan in order to really break through and have this framework of running multiple swaps. Okay, so that's where the kind of idea started. It was for the beginning of this year. So at the moment, we've recently run a few swaps in very different parts of the city. So
Mhm.
currently it's at one time a month. Next month we will be doing two in 1 month. So right now, what it really came down to was we also kind of like curate the swaps based on the swap community's needs, right? Sometimes people will message us and say, "Hey, when's the next swap?" And we're like, "Oh, all right, it's time. Let's get ready." you
They
know,
miss us.
yeah, and then I really try to do my best to listen to the community. They will sometimes people will say, I really want to come, but it's very far away from me this time. Okay,
Mm.
I listened to that. So now we have four upcoming locations that are evenly spread throughout central Bangkok. So that's in the works right now for having multiple locations. The demand for having this is definitely there, and we are preparing ourselves, the team, the supplies, and everything to handle the next phase, which is multiple swaps a month.
Amazing.
Yeah, if I can tell you the specific experience, I did last year. Yeah, last year I did 3 swaps in a week for
Wow.
in collaboration with the Global Fashion Exchange. Global
Exchange,
Fashion
yeah.
Exchange. Yeah. So to commemorate the Rana Plaza victims and whatnot. So we did 3 swaps in a week. We did open air market swap. We did all women swap. And we did a panel discussion swap. And that was, it was amazing. And I'll tell you right now, it's very tough.
It
It's
is.
very tough to run that many swaps. So the idea now is multiple swaps in a month, 3 to 4 swaps once a week. And with my swap team, we will sort of share the responsibility of coordinating, because for us to run, for me to be at 4 swaps a month is, it's just crazy.
Mental.
It's totally mental because it's just
Yeah,
a
like,
very busy
yeah.
process.
Yeah, like you sharing of how you've organized like multiple swaps in 1 week, I cannot comprehend, because like before, when we're doing event-based swaps, we can only do once a month, and we
Mm.
have like an army of volunteers and team to like make that happen. And you doing 3 times in a week, that's mental. I oh my god, I don't know if I can even stand on the second
Yeah.
swap event. But good job on doing that. And you mentioning that you have always been listening to feedbacks and suggestions from your community. What are some of, like, I would say, the top 3 reasons you think why they're doing this? Like, you obviously have some participants who have been there since day one up until now. They are swapping. What are the values that you can see why they are still swapping?
Okay, so I'm not gonna tell them in
Yeah.
prioritized order. I'll just tell you as they flow. First, one of the values is um, because of the concept of swapping, because of what it means, we've
Mm-hmm.
attracted a lot of people who are already in the sustainable environmental community here. So their values are making an impact and being
Mm-hmm.
careful and making suitable choices to not make things worse, right, on this planet. So that's one value, is the respecting the environment. The other value I think that people bring to the swap with them is it's affordable. It's affordable, right? And it's real, right?
Right.
We're not just swapping low quality clothing. There are people who bring very expensive items and they're happy to give it away. And me seeing that, the things that they give away, sometimes, you walk around the swap and then you're like, how could somebody give this away? Right? Like we talk about that all the time. We look at this like, why would somebody want to get rid of this? Or why would they give this away? It's really good quality, it's adorable. But that just goes to show right there
They have the
what clothes,
trust.
yeah, and what clothes mean to people and what they don't mean to people. I've heard
Mm-hmm.
both sides. I've heard people say, oh, I have a lot of expensive clothes, but I'm not going to bring that stuff to the swap. Whereas I have people who donate really high end stuff, and I'm grateful for both, because the swap community, they're looking for a little bit of everything, right? And that's the beauty of I think that's like the third value actually, is that people who come to the swap, they're looking for a one-stop shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the swap gets the job done. They get pajamas, they get cocktail dresses, they get costumes around Halloween time, they get accessories. Sometimes they find stuff for their partner or their children, and they get to meet a bunch of people too. So in that sense, also the networking and the community vibe that people have experienced is something really special. Like
Right.
the value there is the community value. For sure. The
Amazing.
third value is community, for sure.
Community. Ah, I love it. And what has been the most memorable or fun experience that you had?
Overall, this is a recurring experience, is seeing things that I saw in the swap 4 or 5 years ago come back. That is,
Wow.
yeah, that is by far the most special thing. Second to that is meeting up with somebody and then you're like, oh, that was my top, or that was my friend's dress. I remember seeing that. And that's the beauty of it, right? Like people, there's a connection. There's a connection that
Mm-hmm.
happens when people come to the swap, and there's still a connection later on when somebody, is wearing something and you recognize it, or at the swap, somebody will be like, oh, does this look good on me? And they'll be like, oh, that was mine. It looks really great on you. And, the feedback, and, it's not like you donate, and that's great. It's great to
Right.
donate. But when you actually see somebody else taking your items and the happiness that they get, that was one of the things for me about swapping in the past. It's like Christmas. Like a swap is like Christmas. People are so happy. They're so excited with their new stuff. I mean, I remember the feeling the first couple of years, and I would come home and I'd be like, oh my God, like I got look what I would do, like fashion show for my boyfriend. I'm like, look what I got. Yeah, so I think yeah, it's just such a beautiful experience, honestly.
Yeah,
It's fun.
yeah. Oh my God. While you're sharing that answer, I was like all smile in here because I can totally relate of how you feel when even if you're not like in that moment, or
Mhm.
like receiving that compliment, that or seeing your item being swapped, but hearing that kind of comments of like, oh my God, you look good in that, or that's actually my dress, I am happy that you are gonna be the next owner of that. It just makes everything satisfying and fulfilling of all the hardships, especially in organizing physical swaps, because it's not a joke. There's just a lot of logistics
Yeah,
and manpower that needs to that involves for it to happen.
yeah, for sure.
And yeah, so you've also mentioned a while ago, like off the cam, that you did some also organizing outside Bangkok of swaps. How did it go?
I lived in Nepal for a little while, and I wanted to so badly to run swap there. And I was getting ready, everything was happening, and then Fashion Revolution Nepal happened, and I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go to this, and then I'm gonna see what's up, and I want to collaborate, and I want to see what's
Right,
going on
right.
there. But I had to leave Nepal suddenly. So anyway, don't no problem, as we say in Thailand, mai penlai, like means don't worry. Uh,
Yeah.
so then my very good friend, she lives in Myanmar in Yangon, and I said to her, "Are you ready to have swap at your house before I get there?" So we organized swap till you drop Yangon, and it was a large apartment. We had maybe like 20 people come through. It wasn't like this massive, event or anything. It was very, friends of friends kind of deal.
Mhm.
And there were some Myanmar people who attended. And their feedback was, I never would have thought about this concept before. I never would have thought about doing this. In Myanmar, the culture there of secondhand is also a little bit, twisted as well. um, and I find it quite funny overall because like secondhand culture when it comes to furniture, car parts, cars, all that is accepted, but
Yep.
clothing is something completely different, right? Because you wear it on your body, but we have washing machines for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, Myanmar was an interesting experience. And then this year, as I mentioned, pandemic year, my plan was to bring it to Laos. I have many friends there and like a really strong community there. And I think they were ready for that too. But it hasn't happened yet. It will. I'm gonna say
For
yes.
sure, it will. It will.
And I thought about like many years ago when Swap to Drop was like in the beginning stages, and I thought like, oh, maybe there's some sort of Southeast Asia swap union, right?
There
Like
should be.
there
There
should
should
be. I know,
be.
I know. I,
We
I
should
kept,
make it happen.
yeah, I kept thinking like, who else is swapping? What else is happening? And even though at the beginning you said like OG of swapping in Bangkok, and that might be true on like a large sense. The reality is that there were women swapping here before, but it was like
Mhm.
apartments and friends.
Right.
Just how I
Mhm.
started. But I just felt that, if we really wanted to create something that was going to make a difference and it doesn't matter what difference, if it was like, for some people it's environmental, for some people it's fashion, for some people it's affordability, we had to keep going. So that's why it's
Right.
become like an event based um, experience. And you mentioned you guys have like your swap shop there, right?
Mhm.
And I thought, what would it look like in Thailand? I really have been thinking about this. What would swap shop look like in Thailand? But I know that there are other things that the space must do in order
Mhm.
to sustain itself,
Right.
because swapping doesn't actually sustain, right? So
Right.
you have to think outside of the swap box.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved it. Wow. Knowing that you have all the experience and the years of doing this swap, I'm down with my last questions of you being exposed in different cultures and different, I would say, challenges. what do you think is the power of swapping to you?
Okay, let me take a minute to think about that.
Yeah.
I would say the power of swapping is it's kind of like this sense of control. Okay, you take control over a certain aspect of being a human. Shopping, we know that overall, like generally, it has a bad name, right? Like shopping has a bad label to it.
Right.
So when you swap, you are actively taking control back from outside influence, outside sources, outside powers, if you will. And it's giving you, swapping allows you to feel that you are, um, taking control of a situation that many people don't understand how to do. And I think that is like, I don't want to say too much more about the power of swapping, because for me, really, it is about that. Is that this is our way of showing that we can still make a difference, right? That we can still take action, because the thinking is like, many people are like, oh, why should I do this little thing? It doesn't make a difference. If we all do that little thing, it will make a difference, right?
Exactly.
And swapping and fashion and women, I mean, we as women, like, I'll say this because our events are very women focused at the moment. I believe that there's such huge power in numbers and in influence, right? And I try my hardest to influence more men in Thailand to swap. We've opened up swap to men, and the numbers are still not there for us. We would love to see more men swapping, but I know that women bring men's clothing and they take some back for their partners, boyfriends, brothers, friends, uncles, whatever. And that alone right there is something, right? Like they're taking action, they're supporting that movement as well, even if they're not there, but they're still a part of it. So yeah.
Amazing. Wow. I had learned so much from this conversation. Thank you so much, Jessica, for that sharing. And hopefully, not only me, but anyone who is listening for this episode got a thing or two from Jessica's experience and how she pushed forward the swapping movement in Bangkok, Thailand, at the same time, really making it fun and not just in a sustainable way, but the purest intention of us dressing up is to empower ourselves. And with swapping, it's not only ourselves that is being empowered, but also the planet, because we're not harming or we're not causing more waste or pressuring the big companies to produce more. So thank you so much for this. And I'm really hoping when the borders are open to visit you someday and be part of Swap Till You Drop.
Same thing. I went to Singapore, I think last December, with the invitation to come back. So as soon as I'm able to, I will be there for sure.
You should.
I know that we will meet in person. I can guarantee.
For sure. Amazing. Okay, thanks again, Jessica, for the time. And thanks for everyone who tuned in. And we will see you on our next episode.
Thank you. So lovely to chat with you. Thank you so much.